Mr. Adebiyi, please tell us this visit to Berlin to see the Benin Bronzes. What are the legal ramifications to getting them back to
In this
Nigeria?
instance, we are depending more on diplomatic engagement than legal. Because in certain instances, you depend more on the diplomatic methods than the legal methods. Ordinarily, there are laws that relate to this field, the field of repatriation of cultural objects. They are called conventions, treaties. But like all conventions, like all agreements that you have signed, you know, certain conventions are skewed against we, the original owners. And the most important of these conventions is the 1970 UNESCO Convention. So it does not favor us. In this particular instance, it does not favor us. For example, it is not retrospective. It doesn't apply to things that happened before 1970 when that convention was ratified or was made. So which means the Benin Bronzes, for example, are not within the purview of the 1970 convention. So you better negotiate your way out. And that is what we are doing. We've been on this thing for about 11 years now. We started with a group that we formed. We call it Benin Dialogue Group. Through these meetings, we have reached this point today. We introduced what we call the Legacy Restoration Trust. It is all of us now, the European Museums, the Royal Palace of Benin, the National Commission for Museums and Monuments of Nigeria, and the Edo State government are parties to this trust. So we're not talking of ownership in that sense now. We're talking of bringing these things back, using diplomacy, using discussions and dialogues. Of course, we're going to sign agreements, and that's where the legal things come in. So when we get to that point, which is going to be our next meeting, so then we bring the legal aspect of things into it, and that is signing the agreements. But sincerely, concerning this particular instance, it is more of diplomatic discussions than legal. But concerning other antiquities in other countries, including some in Germany here, yeah, you depend on legal introductions into the circumstances. Those that are, in private hands too, must be considered. What we're talking about all along are those ones in museums, public museums, that is, government-sponsored museums owned by the federal government of Germany and the state governments of Germany. But we will get to a stage that we'll be talking in respect of particularly other antiquities like Ife bronzes, some of the lower Niger and lower Benue basin antiquities from Nigeria, and those that left Nigeria under certain circumstances like theft and illegal or illicit export. Those ones, of course, you need the legal angle into it. We'll be discussing that later as well. So, but concerning this, it's more of diplomacy.
Benin Bronzes are one of the most prized items in global art history. There are also the knockheads, like you mentioned, Lower Benue art, the Ife heads, and these are scattered across different museums around the world. What is the Nigerian Museums and Monuments doing to also reach out to the holders of these artworks to return them if they had been taken illegally or if they were taken without due process?
For museums and monuments, uses several methods to get back these antiquities. Sometimes we lay our claims before international mediation panels. For example, the ICP-RCP, which is a panel of the UNESCO in Paris. We have a claim that we have laid before this panel that it will have come up in May if not for the COVID-19 situation. I think it's coming on in September now. The particular date has not been fixed. This is a claim against a dealer, a Belgian dealer, who, well, in one form or the other, an Ife antiquity got into his hand. He took this to England. He sent somebody for assessment in England with the object. And the police there intercepted the object. Now we tried to get this antiquity back, telling him how important it is to Nigeria to have it back. But he is insisting that we should pay a certain sum. Well, we have reached an impasse. We can't go any further except to go to, going to court. That's what it means, and that's what we have done. So that's an episode, an instance of a method of repatriating these cultural objects. Sometimes too, we actually go to court. Then sometimes we negotiate. And then we work out bilateral relationships. For example, the one we are working on with the Americans, called Cultural Property Implementation Act Convention, whereby any antiquity that is more than 250 years old will be returned at the border of the United States to Nigeria without the need for litigation or all these diplomatic shuttles. So it makes it cheaper, less expensive, and more result oriented. That is, just by seeing the antiquity coming into the United States, they are repatriated back because they are from Nigeria. I mean, it makes things easy. So sometimes through bilateral relationships, engagement, we get results. And then, like I mentioned, the Benin Dialogue Group discussions over the years, most of these museums too, that are members of the Benin Dialogue Group, don't permit Nigerian antiquities, or ought not to permit Nigerian antiquities into their museums. That has to do with the language of museum practices itself. That's what we call the ICOM ethic rules that does not permit you to even bring some of these objects in. We know these objects still get to certain museums, but they are not supposed to get there. We try to obey this and inform the various museums to steer clear of such Nigerian objects. And of course, you cannot take Nigerian objects out of Nigeria anymore. The customs and the other security agencies are now more keen on protecting Nigerian antiquities. And we are more keen now on protecting this.
What stops an individual from going to the shrine of his ancestor and picking an artifact, an object, and saying, I want to sell this so that I can feed my family, or and we don't need this artifact anymore? Which law stops them from selling? When do they become no longer personal, but national?
In theory, all owners, let me use the word owners, of antiquity are supposed to register them when accredited agents of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments come to them, in the normal business hours. So, but we know in practice, most people don't. That is, your so-called shrine, let me use the expression, you're supposed to register the content when we call on you. But of course, we have not called on you or to the hypothetical person. So, you are safe. But if we should call on you to register it, you have to register it. So at least we are aware of what is there, what you have. Then it is still your property. If this property is stolen from you and taken to some other country, then it becomes a national issue, because it's under international law. The state, that is the nation, is recognized as the body to bring this thing in. Now, by extension, which means you yourself, without stealing it, cannot take it out of the country without our permission. That is, you can't take an antiquity out of Nigeria without the permission of the National Commission for Museums and Monuments. So, in case we should find you now taking it out, it's not your property anymore at that moment of trying to cross the border with it. We stop you and now, intersect the cultural property. And we might even take it to a museum. Of course, we need the permission of a magistrate actually. And it now becomes national property. Because there is an occasion where a big lawyer, I won't want to mention names now, took his grandfather's regalia to the British Museum. And, we have to write to the British Museum to say, yeah, there's a family heirloom. But the moment this thing was taken out of Nigeria, it's not, national law comes in. So kindly desist from exhibiting this cultural property because it's not Nigerian property. And since then, the gentleman being a lawyer went to court and the court found in our favor. So just telling you, I'm just trying to tell you that once you take it out without the requisite permission, it becomes a national, legal issue, and we step in. So you cannot just say because this thing belongs to your shrine. And then we have incidences of people actually destroying these things. You are even safeguarding it by saying you are protecting, you don't need it, you want to take it out of some. But no, some people, because of this pseudo-religious attitude and all those things, want to destroy these things, claiming that they have found religion. It is illegal to do this. We may not value it today. 100 years' time, some people may see things in a different light. Just like the Europeans see this thing in a different light and it's, fetching money into their, through their museums, they are fetching money through what you call shrine items or shrine objects. So it's your personal opinion that this is a shrine and I've found religion. But to the nation, it is important because, number one, some of them are old, and if objects are old, they may now acquire the value of antiquities. So once we say that this is valuable to Nigeria to keep as part of the records of our history, you cannot say because your from your shrine you want to destroy it, you'll be committing an offense. Only if we don't name it an antiquity. So you better watch out. What you think is a shrine object, maybe something. What we're talking about is the history behind it. It doesn't matter whether you feel that it's not it's not power. Most of those things that you see in Europe as well belong to pre-Christian eras. So they still value them and they know the history behind it. It's the story behind it. How so and so started this city or this town. It is history. Now you go there because you have found religion and you destroy it. And you are destroying the story of how your community was started, or the conquest and all those things like what we are recording. That is what the museum is all about. So please, I think this is an opportunity to tell people that don't commit a crime in the name of trying to, entrench your new value. There are values that might be valuable to everybody in the future.
You piqued my interest with this about communities, individuals finding a new religion, then destroying their heirlooms, ancestral heirlooms. What is the National Commission for Museums and Monuments doing in terms of making this law known, and the fact that the museums are able to receive these artifacts instead of them being destroyed?
The National Commission for Museums and Monuments has established a distinct department called the Department of Education and Training. Education to educate school children, to educate adults as well, on the importance of keeping these things for future generations, and of the importance of letting people know that we are public servants trying to protect history. We are not juju practitioners like people say in Nigeria. No, we don't have any affinity with those objects in that kind of personal sense, but we see the history in them. The history of Europe at a point, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't want to go so deep into history now, but at a point we were at par with Europe. And at a point, probably some of the empires and kingdoms in Africa were superior to the standard of even most parts of Europe. So, but the difference now is that we threw all the things that we should value and cherish, we threw them away. They kept theirs. And they even took ours that we threw away. Sometimes by stealth, sometimes by force. All these things are now what we are trying to retrieve back. Whichever way, value what you have. And then let us see things from a different light now. We are educating people. We even appear on the television stations now, radio stations and all those things. But we'll do more of this because in all sincerity, I think people are not educated enough about these issues. And we should do more about this as part of our work. But we have created a department for this and more education